And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of the people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to the righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Okay, the tribulation is found in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. So we know that Daniel 12 is talking about the tribulation. And verse 1 says, And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as was never since was a nation, even to that same time, and at that time shall the people be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Okay, now if you look at Matthew 24, the count that Christ spoke of in Matthew 24, it says a similar type of thing. It says in Matthew 24:21, it says, For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor shall ever be. And then except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved, but for the elect those days shall be shortened. And then right after that, in verses 28 or 29 through 31, he describes immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And they shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So when we go back to Daniel chapter 12, I took really, you want to pay really close attention to this. We see that this narrative kind of stops in verse 4 of chapter 12 of Daniel, and then he looked, and there stood the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river, and said to the man clothed in linen which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And so then he heard a man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand in heaven, swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half, when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. Okay, this is a 3.5 year period of time here. Okay, now a lot of people read this from verse 1 of 12 all the way to end and think that this is all describing one period of time, but I think that's a mistake. I think that this ends when he says, But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book. Even in time to the end, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. This is the end right here. See, it says that even the wise shall be as firmament and turn many to righteousness, and they that turn righteousness as the stars forever and ever. That's the end. That's the end. And so then when I look at the preceding verses, we just see the same descriptions. Like, for example, it will talk about, let me bring this over here. it will talk about in chapter 11. It talks about the abomination of desolation, and so it says, and the arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary with strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Okay, so if we jump, that's verse 31 of chapter 11, and if we jump down to chapter 12, and we go back and continue on verse 5, and we see how long till this vision is complete, they give this 3.5 year period of time. But it also mentions again in the future after this, and from that time that daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Okay. Now the English translation here, or the way that they spoke in Hebrew, is confusing. I don't know if it means from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away until the abomination that maketh desolate is set up, there should be 1,290 days. I suspect that that is what's going to happen. And if that is true, when it says, "Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 305 and 30 days," that what this is saying is that there's a different period of time, and 45-day extra days. And so from the time the day of sacrifice is taken away until possibly Christ comes will be 1,305 and 30 days, and that he will be destroyed. Well, what I'm trying to say is that most people think of the tribulation as a 7-year period of time, but it may be that it's not really a 7-year period of time. That 7-year period of time may exist. I believe it exists, but it's not a that tribulation spoken of in verse 1 doesn't mention it from the previous verses. You know, there's no mention of great tribulation. There's just talking about there's all these different battles and different power grabs are going to go on, and there will be some indignation against the Holy Covenant, and you know there's going to be evil going on. People be do wickedly, and there'll be a lot of deception, and but there's not mention of any great tribulation. And I believe that this 7-year period starts around verse, let's see, it's hard to find it. Oh, here it is. Around verse 22, it says, okay, verse 23, 11, verse 23, Daniel 11:23 says, "And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people." Okay, that verse, I believe, parallels with Daniel chapter 9. When it says Daniel chapter 9:20 says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." That, I believe, is the mark of the beginning of this 7-year period of time. And in the midst of the week, you shall cause a sacrifice and oblation to cease. That happens in the middle of the 3.5 year period of time. And then the abomination, then when he stands and sets up the abomination, it will happen at the end of that 7-year period of time, towards the end of it, possibly 45 days before the end. And then after that, there's going to be that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. And I'm looking at verse 9:27. So the tribulation and the wrath is not really necessarily mentioned in Daniel 12 in its entirety. It just says that there will be the what do you call it? The resurrection happens, and so that happens when Jesus comes. So we know that verse 2 is when Jesus comes. Verse 1 and 2 is talking about the return of Jesus. We're talking about the rapture in here. So we know for sure that the rapture happens in verse 1. So the question we need to ask is, anything happen after verses 3 and 4 and all that? And you don't see anything. It all starts over in verse 5 and talks about things that already like it just verse 10 says, many shall be tried and made white, and wicked shall be do wickedly. Well, it says in chapter 11, it says the same kind of thing. 11 also talks about many will be tried and made white. So it says, let's see. Yeah. It says, some of them understanding shall fall, to try them and to purge them and make them white, even through the time and end, because is yet for a time appointed. Okay. And so all this stuff is pointing towards a 7-year period of time, which I don't believe is a tribulation. I believe the tribulation, I don't necessarily believe it's a tribulation because it doesn't say in the scripture that. That's what I'm trying to say. That it says, at that time shall Michael, in verse 1 of 12, at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even unto that time. So that's the same thing Jesus is talking about in verse 1. Now, I look like I'm kind of fumbling around figuring this out, but I've obviously already read this, and I'm just trying to go back and look at the stuff I had noted down, and I'm trying to learn as I'm going because there's a lot here. But what we can conclude from this is two things. One is the tribulation does happen in Daniel 12:1. The tribulation happens before the before the resurrection, because in verse 2 it says, and many of them that sleep in the death earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. That happens after verse 1, and the rapture happens when the resurrection happens. And then also there's nothing that happens after this. And then the other conclusion I can make is that the tribulation is not really, I don't see it marked as a 7-year or 3.5-year period of time. I think it happens after, basically after the abomination that brings forth desolation is set up. Because in verse 45 it says, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. That is when Jesus comes, he's going to destroy the Antichrist. You look in 2 Thessalonians 2. And so that is what's going to happen, because I don't see, let's see if I can see it before it. Now, he will exalt himself as God before that. He will say, and he shall do according, shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every God, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of God, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. See, he's saying that until the very end that he's going to be doing this. Okay, that's for sure going to happen. But when it comes to a peak, it seems to be when the tribulation happens. So you're trying to find, I challenge you to find anywhere in the Bible that says that there's going to be a 7-year tribulation. You're not going to find it. Now, you can find clues of it in Revelation, I think. But that's the thing, is we always think, see, if you put yourself in a box and you have a preconceived notion that there's a 7-year tribulation, you're going to be seeing things that are 7-year period times, like 7 trumpets or whatever. And you're going to think, oh, this is the tribulation. But you look in Revelation, a lot of those things that happen in the last year or so. Those things are the period of times I think are going to be the real tribulations. I don't know for sure, but the bottom line here is that everybody assumes that there's going to be a tribulation that's 7 years long or